on set, and he offered some very valuable perspective. We indicated to you during the Bellamy Brown interview on the I Love CVille show that this topic would be in the traditional news cycle eventually, and that happened this past Friday. So we'll analyze what happened with the Charlottesville Police Department and the struggles with rank and file versus, frankly, Charlottesville Police Chief Brackney today on the I Love CVille show. A lot we're going to cover on the program, including finally the FDA giving full approval for the Pfizer vaccine. We'll talk UVA holding opening ceremonies, UVA disenrolling 238 students, roughly 1% of the population at the University of Virginia student body. We'll talk a business in Virginia Beach that is launching that does not exist in Charlottesville. It's a board game business meets a restaurant bar business. So we'll talk about that on the program as well. Ting Pavilion, where Fridays After 5 is held, has got some new rules and standards which we'll analyze today on the I Love CVille show. Give it a like and a share, and if you want your perspective heard on the program, share it in the comments section, and we will gladly read your perspective, your thoughts, your comments, your questions live on air. Judah Wickhauer is our fabulous director. I need, my friend, roughly 10 seconds, and I can rock and roll. All right, we're good, J-Dubs. Thank you, Judah, very much. Guys, welcome to the Monday edition of the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you for joining us. We're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. We're presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Skooma Boutique Dispensary, Charlottesville's newest and most dynamic dispensary on the downtown mall next to Rapture Restaurant. Skooma Boutique Dispensary and its staff, its owner, David, will help you guys understand what they are selling through their certificates of analyses. If you have pain, body pain, aches, knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, they have something for that. If you want to sleep through the night, that's something I don't do very much, is sleep. Skooma Boutique Dispensary's got CBD or Delta 8 that can help you sleep. And folks, Skooma Boutique Dispensary has something that will help you manage that anxiety as well. They're located next to Rapture. Ting Fiber Internet, guys, powers the network. It's truly crazy fast internet. It's Ting Fiber Internet. A lot we're going to cover on the Monday edition of the I Love CVille show. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, put it in the comment section and I will relay your thoughts on air, your questions on air on the program. We're going to get, we'll take a deep dive inside the Charlottesville Police Department. We clearly have a divide within CPD, Charlottesville Police, and it's the divide between leadership and rank and file team members. So we'll analyze that divide and the turn of events that have transpired over the course of a week on the I Love CVille network. We'll talk UVA football and President Jim Ryan and the requirements to attend a UVA football game. We'll identify what those are. We have William and Mary on the docket very soon for UVA football. The season's about to start. UVA on Sunday held opening ceremonies for the classes of 2024 and 2025. We're talking 4,000 people roughly at each ceremony. In fact, more than 4,000 people at each ceremony when you include staff and folks covering the event. They were all on the lawn in fairly close capacity. We'll analyze UVA opening ceremonies today. And speaking of the University of Virginia, they disenrolled 238 students that were not vaccinated, guys. That represents 1% of the student body population here in Charlottesville at Thomas Jefferson University. Ting Pavilion, where Fridays After 5 is held, has some new requirements if you want to enjoy music on the downtown mall. The FDA has finally offered full approval for the Pfizer vaccination. This full approval for the Pfizer vaccination and the COVID shot is likely clearing a path for the government to utilize for mandates. When the Food and Drug Administration offers full approval, then government can utilize the FDA's green light as a way to mandate vaccinations in the country. That topic on the I Love CVille show. And we'll introduce you into a business that is launching in Virginia Beach that does not exist in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Think board games, craft beer and cocktails, and an approachable and affordable menu of food. 600 board games meets craft beer and cocktails and an affordable menu of food. That topic on the program. The lead of the show is something that we predicted was going to go viral and would quickly get within the local or the traditional news cycle of TV, print, and radio. Now it has. I'll cut to the chase. We have a divide with team members in Charlottesville Police Department and Chief Brackney, the CEO of the police department. A survey was released that showcased a tremendous amount of unsatisfaction within rank and file members of the police department and its leader, Chief Brackney. Chief Brackney came into a situation that was sticky at best, unpredictable. She replaces Chief Thomas, who served as police chief in Charlottesville for a New York cup of coffee, a hot second. She came into the Charlottesville Police Department after a legend in Tim Longo departed police chief role within the police department. Chief Longo now in charge of the University of Virginia Police Department. She came into the Charlottesville Police Department very fresh and riding the coattails of August 12, 2017 here in Charlottesville, a day that will live in infamy in Charlottesville, Virginia history, a day that will undoubtedly be discussed in public schools here in Charlottesville and Albemarle County for decades and generations to come. I don't envy the situation that Chief Brackney went into. It was hostile, unpredictable, combative. It was a lightning rod type of situation. Many of the team members in the police department still had strong alliances and allegiances to Tim Longo. You spend any time with Tim Longo, he's a man's man. He gets after it, pumping iron at ACAC. The guy still to this day is working out and doing workout regimens that very few of us can. You spend a couple minutes talking with him, you understand that he's got this contagious personality. You want to follow him. You want to jump in the mix and go after what Tim Longo is going after. You don't spend that many years as chief of CPD, Charlottesville Police Department, without having a number of supporters and followers, and that's exactly what Tim Longo had. A good example of this is he retires from CPD, now he's the university police chief. So Chief Brackney comes in. She replaces Al Thomas, who was on the job briefly. Al Thomas had, frankly, a difficult time playing the politics game that is Charlottesville City Hall. And the Charlottesville City Hall politics game is a lion's den. A lion's den of double talk, a lion's den of fronting, a lion's den of, double-edged sword personalities. Brackney, who's got a PhD, takes over as police chief. She immediately finds herself into, a couple incidents of hot water. She disassembles the SWAT team, Charlottesville Police Department. She has a beef with a churchgoer off Rugby Road who was cutting through private property to get to church. A man who was deaf, this churchgoer. She's a finalist for a police chief position in Dallas, Texas. I'm sure she did not want it made public that she was moonlighting for open positions in Dallas while serving as police chief in Charlottesville. Unfortunately, very little stays secretive in today's ubiquitous social media era, social media and smartphone era. Now she's got a, how would you characterize it? I would characterize it as a morale issue. She has a morale issue with rank and file team members, the backbone of the department, the men and women on the beat, the men and women working overnight shifts, the men and women walking in 105-degree heat with bulletproof vests on, long-sleeve shirts, carrying gear that's quite heavy. The men and women that, frankly, are protecting citizens in the community. She has a morale issue. A large chunk of the department does not feel confident with Chief Brackney as the leader. Lloyd Snook, counselor of Charlottesville City, and I'm paraphrasing what Lloyd Snook says. He recently went on the record over the weekend, and he said in paraphrase fashion, look, she's a woman, she's a black woman, she's new to the job, there's going to be morale issues. That's to be expected. That being said, she's got to fix this. This is her job as the CEO of the police department to fix the morale issues she has. Let's cut to the chase. It's no secret that there's massive attrition and turnover within the Charlottesville Police Department. The men and women that are keeping us healthy and safe are turning over very quickly, and they're sprinting for other jurisdictions and municipalities, greener pastures, if you may, where they can work policing other communities. Take it a step further. Over 70% of the people that work for Charlottesville City cannot afford to live in the city of Charlottesville. So here you have multiple factors going on. You have the affordability issue. Team members working in the police department at Charlottesville cannot afford to live in the city they're serving. You have the attrition issue. You look left and right and people are leaving the police department in Charlottesville for other departments. These are facts. You got the morale issue. You got a macro issue in the United States of America. Murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, a number of other unfortunate incidents. And a good chunk of the country does not think positively of the men and women wearing the badge. You got someone new to the community taking over for a legend, Brackney taking over for Longo. You got a community in Charlottesville that is asking for a complete revitalization of police tactics. You got a large chunk of Charlottesville asking for the department to be defunded, $19 million, the budget for Charlottesville each year. You got a number of people in the community asking for itemized cost expenditures of that $19 million budget. Where's the money going? Clear-cut line item recognition of where that money is going. It's a tough time to be a police officer right now. I've said this once, I'll say it again. With my job, when I go into work, I don't worry about getting back to my wife and my son from a health or safety standpoint. I don't have my wife at home worrying whether or not her husband and the father of her son is going to get back safely, soundly, alive or dead. Very few of us understand the mentality the courage, the risk, the willingness to accept risk that goes with putting on this badge, having the gun on your hip, the bulletproof vest on your chest. You walk out the door, your life is at risk. Those are facts. Those are facts. I've sided with the police multiple times on this network, and I'll do it again. Until we truly realize what it's like to put on a badge, a vest, carry a gun on our hip, and work a job that could jeopardize our health, our future, and our lives, and the families that count on us, I think it's important that we have empathy, patience, benefit of the doubt for the men and women that serve the community. Now, that being said, if there's men and women within any department of local government that is doing illegal things or stepping out of turn from a nefarious standpoint or being the quote, end quote, the bad apple, the rotten tomato, then they need to go. I got no patience for rotten tomatoes and for people utilizing the power that comes with wearing a badge to their personal benefit or financial gain. I have no patience for that. What we have going on in Charlottesville City Hall is yet another leadership crisis. This past Friday at 6 p.m., Charlottesville City Hall issued a 1,700-word rebuttal to the Central Virginia Police Benevolent Association. The Central Virginia Police Benevolent Association published the results of a survey on the conditions within the Charlottesville Police Department. Friday at 6 p.m. Why you do this at 6 p.m. on a Friday makes no freaking sense. City Hall. Friday at 6 p.m., when the 6 o'clock news has started, when print reporters have already put their stories to bed for the Saturday edition, when the I Love CVille show and the I Love CVille network is not on air until the following Monday, City Hall issues a 1,700-word rebuttal saying what the Benevolent Association put out there is not what actually is transpiring. This 1,700-word rebuttal was unsigned. The first mistake City Hall did was issuing the rebuttal at 6 p.m. on a Friday. If you're going to issue a rebuttal like this, you do it in the morning. You hold the press release to this morning. You don't do it Friday at 6. The second mistake City Hall did with the 1,700-word rebuttal is they did not clearly sign who wrote the release. Was it the police chief who wrote the release? Was it Mayor Takaya Walker who wrote the release? Was it City Manager Chip Boyles who wrote the release? Was it Communications Director Brian Wheeler who wrote the release? We don't know if it was Brackney, Walker, Boyles, Wheeler. We don't know if it was City Council. We don't know if it was the HR department, the communications department within the police, within CPD. When you write a 1,700-word rebuttal that is challenging the authenticity, the credibility, the honesty of the Central Virginia Police Benevolent Association, you should put a name associated with that press release. You should not try to slip and sneak and slide and backdoor that rebuttal at 6 p.m. on a Friday when most outlets have already gone to bed with their news. This is called PR 101. An advertising agency like ours, VMV Brands, would have offered consultation to the police department, to City Hall, and said, look, this has got to come out Monday morning. That way it can seamlessly get into the news cycle. Because when the news gets into the news cycle, you have people understanding, reading, and digesting it. Friday at 6, it flies under the radar. And then we would have said, you got to have somebody sign this press release. Not some vague release that comes from some ambiguous individual that we don't know. And then the third thing, this release from the police department, frankly speaking, threw a tremendous amount of officers under the bus. They talk about corporals in the police department sending misogynist text messages, and corporals within the police department saying, quote, let's get back to some hood gangster shit, end quote. I'll use the profanity. That same corporal was using misogynist language. They talk about severing the ties with the Jefferson Area Drug Enforcement Department, hiring a Fourth Amendment analyst, removing school resource officers from Charlottesville High School following a vote from the school board. The CPD in this release began publishing statistics regarding encounters and detentions, along with summaries of actions associated with the internal affairs investigations. So basically what the release did, not only was it timed inappropriately, not only was it unsigned, which is inappropriate, but the 1,700-word release actually threw officers under the bus even more. If you're a police officer and you're reading this release, wouldn't your willingness, Judah, he's looking for you over there. Thank you, sir. Wouldn't your morale and your willingness to give leadership in the department the benefit of the doubt erode even more? Here's a 1,700-word release that's unsigned, that's timed inappropriately, Friday at 6 p.m. instead of Monday morning. And here's a release that throws many officers under the bus. How does that build morale? I'm a team sports guy. Played team sports growing up. First job at a UVA was as a sports writer at the Daily Progress. Covered a UVA team sports, high school team sports. Got to cover the Washington football team. The best leaders, the head coaches, the general managers of team sports, they keep stuff in-house. Discipline kept in-house. Morale in-house. Beefs among team members in-house. The coaches that made these beefs, these squabbles, these troubles publicly known are the ones that often lost the confidence of the rank and file. This is coaching 101. This is leadership 101. Now, what I'm going to say next is commentary that offers a different perspective. Chief Brackney took over a job that was incredibly difficult and arduous. You're fresh off August 12, 2017. You're taking over a job from Tim Longo. Yes, Al Thomas was in between them, but he served as chief for for a New York minute. You're taking over for Tim Longo, who's a legend. You're becoming one of the top cops in this town, in a town that's looking for its identity, its soul, its heart. We're still looking for it in Charlottesville. It was not an easy position to take over. You add the fact that she's a female, an African-American female, in a department that's very white and male. And you can see how there's a collision of a lot of different factors that are making this job difficult to navigate. all I said is fair and accurate. The reason she's paid the big bucks, and she's paid it's public record, you can look it up. You can look it up. I mean, it's a significant wage. The reason she's paid the big bucks, this significant wage, is to navigate these factors. And ask yourself, how well is she doing it? Is going after a Dallas police chief job that becomes very well known, navigating the process appropriately? Is having a press release where dirty laundry is aired within the department, navigating the job appropriately? Is having the massive attrition and turnover on your watch, navigating the job appropriately? Is having morale issues, navigating the job appropriately? Is crashing and showing up unexpectedly to police civilian review board meetings, navigating the job appropriately? These are rhetorical questions, but these are questions you should be asking. Chairman of the Police Civilian Review Board, Bellamy Brown, came on the show last week today, 7 days ago. Very much encourage you to go to iloveseville.com and watch that interview. And the chairman of this review board, a board that's created to help bridge citizens and police officers. That's what the review board is. A group of volunteers, of Charlottesville citizens, who hold police and locals accountable and act as a bridge between taxpayers and police officers. The chairman of this board, Bellamy Brown, friend of the program, big fan of Bellamy Brown, comes on this set, on this network, on this microphone right next to me, and said, I went into this volunteer unpaid job thinking I need to hold the police accountable for the benefit of the citizens. And after time as chairman on the board, he realized that maybe he needs to hold Charlottesville police leadership accountable on behalf of the officers themselves. He says, and I'm paraphrasing, Brown says, and I'm paraphrasing, these guys are already underpaid. They're already underappreciated. They're already disliked by a large portion of the community and the Central Virginia and Charlottesville population. He says they can't afford to live in the town they serve. Those factors are going to impact how they police citizens. Then you add on top of that rank and file team members don't trust leadership within the department. And of course, those factors are going to impact any human on how they go about their 9 to 5 or their 12-hour shift. And you know what? Mr. Bellamy Brown is right. Mr. Bellamy Brown is right. Now, before I get off this topic, and I noticed that we have the Daily Progress, NBC 29, CBS 19, and a couple of radio stations watching the show as we speak. Before I get off this topic, we must ask ourselves about the political strategic partnership that's been forged between the mayor and the police chief and the mayor. That joint venture, that partnership is obvious, it's tangible, it's palpable, you can see it. Is that healthy? Is that good for the community? Should the mayor and the police chief, for lack of better phrase, be as thick as thieves? Or should there be some separation, for lack of better phrase, of church and state? When Mr. Bellamy Brown, the chairman of the Civilian Review Board, says, "I am voting for Brian Pinkston and Juan Diego Wade," and I will leave it at that, Jerry, that speaks volumes to me. Mayor Walker's running for re-election, yes. Washington is running for one of 2 spots open on council. Brian Pinkston is running a second time, and Juan Diego Wade is running for the first time, Charlottesville City Council. And Bellamy Brown says, "I clearly am backing, supporting, and voicing my platform support for Wade and Pinkston." That says a lot, that statement. It says a lot. Politics, she's a tricky beast. Politics are not for everyone. They weren't for Al Thomas. Tim Longo could play the politics game. Dr. Richardson, former city manager, could not play the politics game in City Hall. Could not do it. The politics game in Charlottesville today, August 23rd, 2021, is as complicated, as hornet's nest as you're going to get as a game to play. You got a city, literally as we speak, confronting itself on its racist past. You got the city, literally as we speak, confronting itself on affordable housing. You have the city, literally as we speak, confronting itself on how to manage COVID and the surging Delta variant. You have the city, literally as we speak, navigating monuments of war, what to do with them and how to move forward with them. You have the city, literally as we speak, with a vacancy rate between 15 and 20% on its most important 8 blocks, the downtown mall. You have the city, literally as we speak, on the cusp of hybrid education for yet another year for its public school system. You have the city, literally as we speak, with the top elected official, the mayor of Charlottesville, Mayor Nikiah Walker, writing poetry that compares the town to rape and male ejaculatory fluids. You have the city, literally, as we speak, searching for its identity and its heart and soul. And the top players in this city, the Chip Boyleses of the world, the Nikiah Walkers of the world, the Chief Brackneys of the world. These individuals, the Jim Ryans of the world, have to navigate all these landmines, have to tiptoe on eggshells, because if they don't navigate the landmines appropriately, they blow up in their face and they have a PR poop storm of tremendous proportions. And we saw that recently with Mayor Walker's poem that made global headlines. If you notice, she has been very, very quiet since that poem. And it's no coincidence that she's running for re-election and is being quiet with her commentary on social media. Political strategy. That's the first topic of the program, 37 minutes in. It is a topic that is nebulous and fluid. I would expect a response perhaps from the Benevolent Association, its leader Mike Wells, who I have tremendous respect for. Detective Mike Wells has come on this show, this network, Tremendous respect for that guy. I would think a response from the Benevolent Association to a 6 p.m. Friday 1,700-word press release that was unsigned and poorly timed. If we don't figure out what's happening within this department, the attrition will continue, the morale will suffer, and we as taxpayers will be left with the department that is not what we need. We got to fix this. We got to fix it. All right, next topic on the program today. And if you have comments, thoughts, perspective that you want to relay on air, put them in the comments section. Jenny Ornalis, Aaron King, Western Almost Finest, Aaron King, Mark Dewey, hello and welcome to the program, just to name a few. I got 5 media outlets watching the program literally as we speak. UVA football, this is positive. UVA football is not requiring masks and is not limiting fan attendance this fall. People who are vaccinated will not be required to wear masks while attending football games or outdoor concerts at Scott Stadium. However, masks will be required at those events in enclosed spaces like restrooms, elevators, or the indoor portion of hospitality suites. I was thinking about this. On Friday, I was out of town spending some time with family in Poughkeepsie, New York. We stayed at the Poughkeepsie Grand Hotel. Poughkeepsie is what? Is that the Hudson River? Beautiful town. Seen some better days, some vacant storefronts. Poughkeepsie is the home of Marist and Vassar, 2 colleges and universities of higher learning, respected universities in college. My wife and I, my family and I, spending some time in Poughkeepsie. I can't think of a more dangerous COVID scenario than riding an elevator with unmasked people that you don't know that are strangers. I've compared school bus driving. You're a school bus driver. There's no secret there's a shortage of bus drivers in school districts and municipalities and jurisdictions. You're a bus driver, you're underpaid. You're a bus driver, you're underappreciated. You're underrespected. You're a bus driver, you don't get good benefits, health benefits, work perks. You're a bus driver, you're driving a poorly ventilated tin can with 20 to 40 rugrats that don't listen to you, unvaccinated rugrats, unmasked rugrats, breathing the same air in a poorly ventilated tin can. No secret we have a shortage in bus drivers. You know what's more dangerous and risky than riding a school bus? Getting on an elevator with unmasked people, going up and down floors in a box the size of a closet. That's what's more dangerous than a school bus driver. Mask not required at football games or outdoor concerts at Scott Stadium. You got to show some proof of vaccination, though. UVA on Sunday held opening ceremonies for the class of 2024 and the class of 2025. The class of 2024 gathered on the lawn this past Sunday at 1 p.m. in 90-degree heat. Nearly 4,000 students sitting next to each other, with President Ryan and his staff also in the mix in addressing the students. So 4,000 people at 1 o'clock on the lawn. Later that day, the next class was honored, and the next class was the class of 2025. That's 5 hours after the class of 2024 had opening ceremonies. And the class of 2025 is roughly it's exactly 3,919 first-year students. There's 3,919 first-year students at UVA. Here's a great stat. 56% are female. 56% of the 3,919 first years at UVA are female. So over the course of an afternoon and evening this past Sunday, you had 7,919 students sitting in seats next to each other. Excuse me. Almost 8,000 kids. 8,000 students, excuse me. Students are back, UVA. We're less than 2 weeks from the season opener, UVA football. Public school students are now fully in the hallways, Charlottesville, Albemarle, and Central Virginia schools, learning in classrooms. Parents and families are back from vacations that happened in early and mid-August, now firmly root planted, ready to go for the fall semester in Central Virginia. We will learn what this community is all about. We will learn what this community is about from a COVID standpoint, a vaccination standpoint, a resilient standpoint, a willingness to mask up standpoint, a willingness to get ahead of this Delta spread that's more contagious than the chicken pox in the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, with UVA students back, with kids learning in public school classrooms in poorly ventilated hallways, with families no longer vacationing, with roots planted throughout the rest of the year as the fall semester is upon us, we're going to learn what Charlottesville and Central Virginia is about from squashing this pandemic, whether we will do it or not. Lee Elberson, friend of the program, CEO of Claiborne Education, puts the over-under at Thanksgiving for students going back to 100% hybrid. He says, let's put the over-under at Thanksgiving. He takes the under before Thanksgiving for students going back to hybrid learning. I pray, I'm a God-fearing man. I hope, I'm a positive guy, glasses half full guy, that that's not the case. Time will tell. Next topic on the program, UVA disenrolled 238 students because of no vaccination. That represents about 1% of the population. UVA is not messing around. If you don't comply and you don't get vaxxed, you're peacing out. Interestingly, students are required to get vaccinated, but staff and faculty are not. How is that not a contradiction, a catch-22, or hypocrisy? UVA says to its student body, you and your parents are what keeps UVA running a for-profit business in the black. Student body, you must be vaccinated to come back to Charlottesville. Faculty and staff, it's up to you. It's your decision to get vaccinated or not. Students, you have to. Faculty and staff, it's your decision whether or not to get vaxxed. That seems like, to me, hypocrisy. The Ting Pavilion, much like other music venues and concert venues in this area, is now requiring attendees and guests to show proof of vaccination or a negative test within the past 72 hours. This new policy only applies to ticketed concert events at the Ting Pavilion. It does not apply to Fridays after 5 events that are still on the calendar the rest of the year. Much easier to navigate the proof of vaccination process in a ticketed event where people are going through turnstiles and waiting in line than Fridays after 5 when we just kind of meander and matriculate and move within the venue. You got to have a negative test within 72 hours if you want to go to a ticketed event at the Ting Pavilion or show proof of vaccination. And speaking of proof of vaccination, the FDA now has given full approval for the Pfizer vax. Full approval for the Pfizer vax. I know a lot of folks don't want to hear this. When the Food and Drug Administration gives full approval for the Pfizer vaccine, this is a leverage point for government to mandate vaccines across the board. As the other vaccines get FDA full approval, please listen. The next thing that's going to happen is a mandate of government for this vaccination for its citizens. I know a lot of folks don't want to hear this, but that's the next thing that's going to happen. Board games, this intrigued me when I was reading the Virginia Beach newspaper, the Virginian Pilot. I like the Pilot. There's a business that's soon to open that's a board game concept, a restaurant concept, and a bar concept. 600 board games, an approachable bar with craft beers and cocktails, and a menu that's priced fairly. You can go to Roll With It Board Game Cafe and Bar. Roll With It Board Game Cafe and Bar. Not a bad name. I think I would have tweaked that a little bit. The branding guy in me would have tweaked that a little bit. But still, I respect anybody that's trying to get into the entrepreneur space. Roll With It Board Game Cafe and Bar will soon open. I read this article and I realized that this concept does not exist in Charlottesville. Where can you go and play board games with friends and have beers and cocktails? Court Square Tavern has some board games. Not many people go to Court Square Tavern, but they have board games. Where else in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, or Central Virginia can you go with friends, play board games? And I'm not just saying a beat-up version of Parcheesi is on the shelf in the corner, or a beat-up version of Monopoly with only the thimble and the car as pieces that are left in the box. I'm talking legitimate, championed, and treasured board games. Have beers and wine and cocktails and food and play board games in great condition. Where can you do that? That concept doesn't exist in this area, interestingly. All right, the final topic before we get to your thoughts on today's show. The New York City has mandated vaccines for all public school staff and teachers. The FDA approved the Pfizer shot, and right after the Pfizer shot was fully approved by the FDA, New York City mandated COVID vaccine shots for all staff and faculty. There's no coincidence there. FDA, approved shot, fully approved. A mere hours later, New York City mandated the vaccination for all its staff and faculty. That is not a coincidence. And please expect more of that to come down the pipe. And eventually here locally in Charlottesville. Oh, I want to mention this. Did you know Animal Connection and Patty Zeller was named the Retailer of the Year in the pet category? Animal Connection at Ix Park was literally named the Retailer of the Year. Props and praise and kudos to Patty Zeller. Janice Trevelyan, good call. Good call. She says Firefly. That's actually not a bad call, Janice. Firefly does have board games, and it does have like games like skee ball, and like what's the hunting game, Judah, that you often see at restaurants and bars where you're trying to shoot the elk? Is it Buck Hunter? It's Buck Hunter, right? I think it's Buck Hunter. Firefly is as close to the game as possible. Janice says, sorry, but I have so many friends and family members that are vaccinated that are testing positive for COVID. I don't think the vaccine passports are going to do it. One is a physician wearing a N95 mask. He was vaccinated and got COVID. Janice, good comments right there. So I'm going to offer this perspective here. Beating COVID is as much about vaccinations and vaccination rates and hospitalizations and cases and deaths and empty hospital beds. It's that. It's no question. But it's also the battle of perception. In America today, because of the ubiquitous nature of smartphones and social media, and because Americans rush to judgment, perception is reality. And the perception with this pandemic is half the population, which is true. Half of Americans have been vaccinated, roughly. If we want to beat this pandemic, we need to win the battle of perception along with the battle of health and the battle of vaccinations and the battle of keeping people safe. If we can get a United States vaccination rate that is as high as the vaccine rate, say, in Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville, then the media, and remember, the media, if it bleeds, it leads. The news is a business, okay? The media pushes fear. If it bleeds, it leads. If you can get a vaccination rate that's high, like in Albemarle and Charlottesville, across the nation, then the media doesn't have that story it can leverage and push down our throats every single time we turn on the TV or look in our news feeds about poor vaccination rates. We win the battle of perception, and the media that is clearly using this to its advantage will lose a leverage point to drive, if it bleeds, it leads narrative. We got to win the health, the safety, the betterment of our hospital workers and medical workers, our teachers, our frontline workers. We got to win those battles. We also got to win the perception battle as well. Scott Aaronworth, the Esquire in Virginia Beach, says, amen, Jerry. And do not forget the rap concert they held Saturday night at the University of Virginia. They had a pretty large concert on Saturday night. Scott Aaronworth is exactly right. And that was, who was it, Jack Harlow? It was Jack Harlow, Saturday evening, getting after it. He's a rapper, an American rapper. On Saturday evening to a packed house in front of the, right off the lawn at the University of Virginia. All right, so that's the Monday edition of the show. It's good to be back, man. It's good to be back. Scott, thank you for those comments. Janice, thank you for those comments as well. Johnny, thank you for interacting with the show. It's good to interact with you. If you have topics, questions, ideas you want on the program, send me a DM, and we likely will relay them on air. The show's dynamic and interactive. I'm going to close the program by saying this police civilian review board and this police morale issue and this benevolent association issue, and folks, frankly, uncertain about leadership here in Charlottesville Police Department, it's not going away anytime soon. It's not going away anytime soon. This is the Monday edition of the I Love CVille show. Thank you for joining us. We will see you tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. with Real Talk with Keith Smith. Take care.